All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today is August 23rd, 2020. This is a special meeting of the members of the State Liquor Authority being held in Albany and also remotely. We have on the phone Chairman Bradley.
Yes, I'm here.
We also have on the video Commissioners Ford and Commissioner Span. We have General Counsel Meyerhoff is also on video. We have on the phone Deputy Commissioner of Licensing Roberts.
I'm here, Tom.
And myself, Secretary down in the Albany office. We have 6 items on today's calendar. And I'll just ask everybody to make sure you mute your lines because we're getting some background noise. I appreciate that. We have 6 items on today's calendar. They're all requests from Council's office for summary orders of suspension. We'll proceed right to those. The first item is agenda number 1035Z. King's EB 1289400. The licensee is El Salvador Restaurant de Marina, Inc.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners, and Ford, Senior Attorney Karamanal here on behalf of Council's office on this request for summary order suspension for El Salvador Restaurant de Marina, Inc. Case number 147323. The original license issuance date for this one is November 25 of 2015. Let's see, Saturday, last night, August 22nd, 2020, at approximately 8:25, investigator Matthew Davis entered the licensed premises and observed alcoholic beverages being consumed by 10 patrons inside the licensed premises. Let's see, no food was observed having been served to anyone. As you can see by the pictures attached to the file, it appears to be a fairly packed house. There was nobody in the licensed premises that you could see that was properly wearing a face covering, although at least one looked like one patron and one employee had them over their chins. When confronted by Investigator Davis, the manager initially refused to tell the patrons to leave because she, quote, had rent to pay, unquote. In fact, the manager, Ms. Rodriguez, only changed her mind and told the patrons to leave the licensed premises after Investigator Davis threatened to call the NYPD. The licensee is hereby being charged with violating Executive Orders 202.16 and 202.3, as well as failure to supervise for these violations. The need to guard against on-premises consumption of food or beverages in New York City during the reopening is central to the governor's executive orders in the name of public health and safety, and has been widely reported via media sources. At no point during any phase of the reopening has on-premises consumption of food or beverages been permissible in New York City. As a result, it is the position of the Office of Counsel. It's simply not reasonable to believe that a licensed retailer in New York City could be unaware of her responsibilities to prevent on-premises consumption of food or beverages during the reopening. It's therefore the opinion of the Office of Counsel that this licensee was fully aware of her responsibilities under the governor's executive orders to prevent on-premises consumption of food or beverages during the reopening, and merely chose to ignore those responsibilities in an effort to gain more customers at the expense of her more responsible competitors. For that reason, the Office of Counsel requests an immediate order of summary suspension on this license. Thank you.
Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
Paul, do they have any adverse history?
I do not. It's the first time.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ford, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Chairman Bradley, any questions?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
All right, with that, I will call for your votes. First, Commissioner Fan.
Given the evidence presented with patrons drinking inside and patrons also standing outside drinking with no food, and employees and patrons alike not wearing proper face covering, I find that this licensed premise poses an imminent threat to public health, welfare, and safety, and I vote to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford, your vote.
For all the reasons listed by Commissioner Fan and Council, I vote to summarily suspend as well.
Chairman Bradley, your vote.
I vote to summarily suspend based on Commissioner Fan's for the same reasons Commissioner Fan already stated.
All right, then the next item I have is agenda number 1035 AA. It's King's OP 1313546. Licensee is NY Pizza Cafe and Spanish Food Restaurant Corp.
Okay, good afternoon once again, Chairman, Commissioners, Senior Attorney Karamanal here on behalf of Council's office on this request for a summary order suspension for New York Pizza Cafe and Spanish Food Restaurant Corp. Case number 147324. The original license issuance here was January 17 of 2019. On Saturday, last night, Saturday, August 22nd, 2020, approximately 7:30 p.m., Investigator Matthew Davis observed alcoholic beverages being consumed by 6 persons inside the licensed premises, 3 of which turned out to be patrons. As you can see by the pictures in the file, there's a couple of folks shooting pool, one that appeared to be placing an order for a to-go beverage. Nobody in the licensed premises was wearing a face covering, whether it be patrons or staff. No food was served to any other persons ordering alcoholic beverages, including one patron observed by Investigator Davis pouring an alcoholic beverage into a to-go cup and leaving the licensed premises without any food. When confronted by Investigator Davis, the manager admitted that no food had been served to any of the patrons on the premises. Licensee is being charged with violating Executive Order 202.16 and 202.3, as well as failure to supervise for these violations. The need for licensees to guard against on-premises consumption of food or alcoholic beverages in New York City, and the need to sell food with every to-go order of alcoholic beverages in the state during the reopening is central to the governor's executive orders in the name of public health and safety, and has been widely reported via media sources. At no point during any phase of the reopening has on-premises consumption of food or alcoholic beverages been permissible in New York City. As a result, it is the position of the Office of Counsel that it's simply not reasonable to believe that a licensed retailer in New York City could be unaware of his responsibilities to prevent on-premises consumption of food or beverages during the reopening, or of his need to sell food with every to-go order of alcoholic beverages. It's therefore the opinion of the Office of Counsel that a licensee was fully aware of his responsibilities under the governor's executive orders during the reopening and merely chose to attempt to circumvent the requirements in an effort to gain more customers at the expense of his more responsible competitors who have chosen to follow the rules. Due to the foregoing, the Office of Counsel hereby requests an immediate summary order of suspension be issued for this license.
Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
Paul, you said that there were 6 people inside, and then in the end, only 3 were patrons. So the other 3 are employees, or the owner himself?
There were 2 employees and the owner, and they were drinking as well. Thus, the initial confusion on the part of the investigator.
Okay, so the owner himself is drinking inside with the patrons. Okay, thank you.
I would think it's a violation to serve anybody, whether you're an employee, the owner, a patron. The service inside restrictions are not limited to patrons.
Commissioner Ford, do you have any questions?
Counselor, you said they were licensed in January of 2019. Is that what you said?
That's correct. That's correct, Commissioner.
All right. Is there any adverse history that you see?
We had a couple of police reports of unlicensed security guards from last fall, but nothing that we've taken all the way to a hearing yet.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Chairman Bradley, do you have any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
All right, with that, I'll call for the vote of the members. First, Commissioner Fan.
This licensee is clearly disregarding the governor's executive order surrounding the prevention of the spread of COVID-19, given that he was found inside his licensed premise drinking with his patrons. And we have pictures of, patrons casually playing pool with no masks on. And so this location is clearly an imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare. So I vote to summarily suspend this license.
All right, Commissioner Ford.
I vote to summarily suspend for all of those reasons as well.
And Chairman Bradley.
I vote to summarily suspend. Dining inside has not been legal since the reopening, and it's obvious, not dining and drinking, and it's obvious that this licensee was allowing his patrons to not only play pool, but also drink inside the premises, most of them not wearing masks. It's obvious that this is a risk to public health, safety, and welfare. So based particularly on the pictures and council's presentation, I vote to summarily suspend.
All right, then the next item I have is 1035BB. It's King's OP 1171798. The licensee is La Fogata Restaurant and Cafe Corp.
Margarita Marsico, for council's office, and before the members to request that you issue an emergency order of summary suspension as to La Fogata, which is operating out of 1549 Gates Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. It's in a mixed neighborhood. There are residences in the nearby vicinity. On August 22nd at approximately 8:31, Investigator Davis crossed the street and observed a male patron seated outside the premise drinking a beer. They entered the premise, they observed two male patrons inside playing pool while not wearing a mask, and they were also drinking Modelo beer. The investigator told me this morning that he recalls that they were drinking Modelo beer. There was also, with regard to the patron that was outside, there was no food on the table. So this would be a violation of 202.3. The investigator Davis also observed a female bartender not wearing a mask. And he took a photograph, which is submitted to the members. He also told me he observed the owner, who he later spoke with, leaving the kitchen while not wearing a mask and then putting on the mask as he walked toward the front door of the restaurant. The investigator asked the licensee principal, Vargas, about serving alcohol to patrons with no food. And Mr. Vargas is apparently was a Spanish speaker. He wasn't totally fluent in English, but he did, Investigator Davis spoke to him, said, you know, you're not permitted to serve alcohol without food. And Mr. Vargas responded, no, sorry, they no food. So that would be a violation of Executive Order 202.52, which requires that appropriate food be served with alcohol. So although there weren't that many people inside, it does not appear that any of them were really following the law. And the licensee has acknowledged his violation. So for these reasons, we're requesting that you issue an order of summary suspension. And there is a little adverse history. They had a violation for unlicensed security guard and disorderly premise, both in 2018. They paid $3,000 in fines.
Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
When was this license issued, Margarita?
In 2006.
Okay.
Commissioner Ford, do you have any questions?
You said their adverse history is an unlicensed guard, and what was the other one, Margarita?
Unlicensed guard and disorderly premise, both in 2018.
Okay, thank you.
They have some older adverse history that I don't know if the members are interested in, from going back to like 2010.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
I thought you said the license was issued in 2016.
2006.
Oh, 2006. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. That's fine. Thank you.
Chairman Bradley, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
All right, with that, I'll call for the vote of the members. First, Commissioner Fan.
By allowing indoor service and service of alcohol with no food, and patrons and employees not wearing sufficient face covering, this licensee has violated multiple of the governor's executive order designed to prevent the spread of COVID-19 within the New York State. And due to imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare, I'm voting to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford, your vote.
I vote to summarily suspend as well. From the owner's comments, it was clear he knew that he wasn't serving food when he knew he should have been, amongst other things. So I vote to summarily suspend as well.
Chairman Bradley.
I vote to summarily suspend. The owner was not wearing a mask. There were people drinking inside, playing pool. Indoor service of any kind in New York City has been illegal since the opening began, and it's still currently not allowed. Every licensee is aware of that, and this licensee has chosen to ignore that. So they've, in my mind, created a risk to public health, safety, and welfare, and I vote to summarily suspend.
All right, then the next item I have is 1035CC. Suffolk OP 1244400. The licensee is Z1 New York, Inc.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Michael Amarato from the Office of Counsel hereby submits the subject licensee Z1 New York, Inc., doing business as 75 Main Group, to the members of the authority to consider an emergency order of suspension of their retail OP license pursuant to Section 401, subsection 3 of the State Administrative Procedure Act. The premises is located on 75 Main Street in Southampton, that's in Suffolk County, New York. The principal is Zapnel Erdem. The license was issued on August 11th, 2010. The method of operation consists of it being operated as 90% restaurant and indicates 10% DJ. The maximum occupancy of this premises is 154. Last night, on August 22nd, 2020, the task force, which consisted of Investigator Stravali, the Sheriff's Office, the Suffolk County PD, and the Southampton Village Police Department, conducted a surveillance and investigation of this premises. In a mere 9 minutes, according to Investigator Stravali, he observed 8 patrons standing in line at the front door, congregating and lingering as they were waiting to get in. There was no social distancing, and most of the patrons were not wearing masks. Employees weren't wearing masks, and there were patrons standing in the outdoor area where other people were dining without wearing masks or social distancing. If you look at page 3 of the report, you'll see the photographs of the patrons as it existed between 5:48 p.m. and 5:57 p.m. Shortly thereafter, Investigator Stravali returned to the premises at 7 p.m. So he observed 6 patrons standing by the bar, multiple employees not wearing masks. The people standing at the bar were virtually shoulder to shoulder. He observed patrons walking around the premises without masks, approaching other tables, conversing with patrons, consuming shots as they stood up and spoke with the people at the table. He saw a bathroom line that consisted of 8 people who were not socially distanced, and some were not wearing masks. And oddly enough, there were 27 employees, and not one of them attempted to control the line that was congregating at the bathroom or the other goings-ons during the course of his inspection. He also observed 1 kitchen worker was observed not wearing a mask, and 2 female bartenders were not wearing masks either. Investigator Stravali purchased the beer, and he was not required to purchase food as well. And if that wasn't enough, during the course of these 2 inspections, there was an underage police agent who was able to purchase alcohol at 7:54 p.m. and once again at 9:08 p.m. And the underage agent wasn't required to purchase food either. The licensee absolutely cannot say he wasn't warned. If we go back to July 28, there was an investigation conducted by the task force at that time, and it was found that 1 wait staff and 2 kitchen staff members were not wearing masks. They were warned, and there was a notice of pleading issued. We received a not guilty plea on August 10th. Prior to that, on June 13th, the Southampton Village Police Department received many complaints for pedestrians stating that 75 Main had customers seated indoors. And back in June 13th, that was phase 2 on Long Island, and it only permitted outdoor seating. The police arrived, and they described the patrons as seated at tables indoor as far as the eye can see, and they also observed several patrons seated at the bar. There were over 75 people observed seated indoors, which is clearly a violation of 202.3. The licensee was notified and he came to the scene. And that was the second time the licensee had been warned. On June 15th, the police responded to a COVID-19 complaint, and upon arrival, they observed a group of children eating inside the premises. Once again, the police warned the licensee, Zach Erden, about the requirements under Phase 2, which only allowed for outdoor dining. A notice of pleading was served in connection with that matter as well, and the licensee also pled not guilty. So in addition to the EO violations that the investigators and the police observed last night, namely 202.38, 202.43, 202.16, 202.52, there are 16 other ABCL violations that were identified, including fire and safety code violations, all alleged in the notice of pleading, case number 147325. Clearly, the licensee was warned on several occasions by the Southampton Village Police Department, by the task force, by way of the notice of pleadings, and still the management continues to operate in violation of the executive orders. Evidenced by the photographs, conversations I had with the SLA investigators and members of the Southampton Village Police Department, this establishment continues to jeopardize the health, safety, and welfare of the patrons, employees, and the others associated with this premises. In sum, the licensee poses an imminent risk to the public, and counsel's office respectfully requests that the board imposes an emergency order suspension pursuant to 401 subsection 3 of the State Administrative Procedure Act. Thank you.
Commissioner Fan, any questions?
Mike, you said, so I think there was one CNC that was accepted surrounding their EO violations, right? How many pending matters are there?
There are two.
There are two pending, and one was a CNC, or?
I don't believe it's gone to the board yet.
Okay, so there are two pending.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
case number 145911 and 144646.
And then can you just quickly describe what the charges are in those two again?
Absolutely. In case number 145911, it is alleged that on July 28, 2020, the task force observed one wait staff not wearing a mask and two kitchen staff members not wearing a mask. And they were charged under 202.16, along with failure to supervise. On notice of pleading 144646, it's alleged that on June 13th is when the police arrived and they observed approximately or over 75 people seated indoors in violation of 202.3. Licensee was notified as well. And then 2 days later, on June 15th, the police received a call of a complaint that people had observed children inside the establishment eating. When the police arrived, that's exactly what they observed. They saw a group of children observed eating inside. Once again, the licensee was warned, and they were charged with 202.3, along with failure to supervise the premises as well.
Okay, thank you. So there are 3 dates.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ford, do you have any questions?
What's up with the the Turkish liquor behind the bar, Counselor? What's that all about?
Well, it is basically, as it's shown in the photograph, there was no federal warning label on that bottle. And when Investigator Cervali spoke with the licensee, he admitted that he had received that bottle as a gift, but it was behind the bar and he was using it as part of his products that were available for sale.
Got it. Thank you. No further questions.
Chairman Bradley, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Mike, did this visit also result from complaints from the Southampton Police Department?
Yes, it did, Chairman Bradley. There were numerous complaints.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I'll call for your votes. First, Commissioner Fan.
It's given the evidence that and all the pleadings on record for this licensee, it's clear that he is disregarding this authority and also disregarding the governor's executive orders surrounding the effort to curb the spread of COVID-19. Judging from the pictures, it looks like people are happily partying with no mask on and drinking shoulder to shoulder in this establishment, and employees also serving customers with no mask, which is pretty ridiculous at this point. And so due to imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare, I'm voting to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford, your vote.
Yeah, the photos make it look like it's just normal business and there's like nothing going on right now at all. There was also a table in the rear that wasn't on the diagram. I believe there was gas tanks that weren't properly secured, an open electrical junction box. I think there was even a letter, post from the, was it at a post from the fire department about do not put anything else in this room? I think that was the case. So anyway, for all those safety violations plus everything else that Commissioner Fan and Counselor has mentioned, I vote to summarily suspend.
Chairman Bradley.
I vote to summarily suspend as well. If the licensee doesn't get the message after 2 other cases on 3 separate dates, I don't see any choice but to summarily suspend when the behavior continues as it did last night. It's obvious that this licensee is creating a risk to the public health, safety, and welfare, and therefore I vote to summarily suspend.
Thank you.
All right, the next item I have is agenda number 1035DD, serial number Queens OP 1315369. The licensee is Sterling 40-01 LLC.
Good afternoon, members of the authority, everyone else. Robert Buckley for Counsel's Office. This licensee has the trade name Esquina Tequila. This license was originally issued on April 11, 2019. There's no adverse history. There's one licensed principal, William Loaiza. There was this premises has been a fixture under prior licensees. I happened to have attended that location on a wedding reception when I was a prior licensee, so I'm familiar with the location itself. It's a relatively large restaurant on Northern Boulevard in the beginning or in the Steinway Street. Investigator Stravali, along with the New York City Police Vice Enforcement, was there on Thursday, August 20th of 2020 for about 31 minutes from 11:08 p.m. to 11:39 p.m. And at that point, the premises did have tables set out alongside both Northern Boulevard and Steinway Street. But the investigators found people congregating, lingering, still drinking, and apparently when the task force arrived, that is when security seemed to intervene and take drinks out of hands from persons who were outside the location. And this the licensee had been inspected on a prior occasion on Saturday, July 25th, 2020, again by Investigator Stravali, this time with the local 114 precinct, and apparently the location was in a similar configuration where there were in fact tables set up on appears to be on the roadway and sidewalk. The persons were standing, lingering this would be at 7:23 p.m., much early in the evening than the prior visit and the subsequent visit on this August 20th. Investigator Stravali also reports that his inspection found that the liquor license was not posted properly, only a photocopy, warning signs not posted properly. They were obscured. There was sangria, pre-mixed sangria containing wine and triple sec and juices. Extension cords uses permanent wiring. The health department permit had expired February 29th of 2020 is unlicensed security guard. Fire extinguishers uninspected, unmounted, and a compressed gas tank was in the basement, unsecured, and hookah was being served in this premises, so it certainly does not qualify for a hookah permit, and certainly smoking is prohibited in any licensed premises. Just one other thing as to Mr. Loiza, there's an open complaint that I've tried to ask our enforcement bureau what's the status of it, and I've not been able to reach anyone to find out. There's an allegation that this William Loiza is deceased. Mr. Loiza was the manager of the prior incarnation of this location, Tequila Sunrise. It was, again, a fixture in the area. It was licensed for almost 30 years, and Mr. Loiza indicates in his first questionnaire he was the manager for 28 somewhat years, from 1990 to 2018, when this premises was seized by the state for tax arrears over $200,000. So it appears that the premises has operated in the same fashion as a Mexican restaurant, but the allegation is that the premises is operating also as a nightclub, where there's, again, the complaint that was sent in that indicated Mr. Loiza was no longer alive. Also had a flyer indicating that there was a bikinis and water guns event on Friday, July 10th. You know, we don't know if that event ever took place. That's part of the investigation that the investigator would have to look into to interview Mr. Loiza or whoever else is running this location. And just as, again, aside, you know, the manager on this August 20th date was a Nicholas Loiza. Good assumption that might be a same family. But again, this licensee as again, Mr. Loiza, whether he's William Loiza, the principal, being a manager for this location for many, many years, should certainly be aware of the rules of the State Liquor Authority now, that the new executive orders and Department of Health guidelines, et cetera, that govern on-premise locations. It seems that this licensee knows the rules, indicating because the security and other employees try to correct things when the executive order task force arrived. But certainly it appears that on 2 occasions this licensee is in violation of the executive order that licensees are bound by, particularly 202.38, 202.43, which requires licensees to monitor their location for compliance with health regulations, face covering, and social distancing. So for all that, the authority submits this to the members for emergency order summary suspension.
Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Ford, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions, Tom. Thank you.
Chairman Bradley.
I have no questions. Thank you.
All right, then, with that, I'll call for your votes. First, Commissioner Fan.
This license premise have everything that could go wrong with it. They're clearly ignoring all of the governor's executive orders preventing the spread of COVID-19. They've also pretty much broken every ABC law there is to break. And it sounds like the owner may or may not be in charge, and it's unclear right now who's running this place. And so this place is clearly a threat to public health, safety, and welfare. So I vote to summarily suspend this license.
Okay, Commissioner Ford, your vote.
I believe that the number and severity of violations that this licensee has violated tilt the scale toward the egregious end of things. So I vote to summarily suspend.
And Chairman Bradley.
It's clear that this licensee is either unable or unwilling to enforce the executive orders that were put in place to make sure that the COVID-19 does not spread. The activities that are happening at this licensed premise are exactly the type of activities that the executive orders were put in place to avoid. I don't think there's any choice here but to summarily suspend it, because it's clear that it is a risk to the public health, safety, and welfare.
All right, with that, the next item I have is 1035EE. It's King's EB 1273134. Licensee is Mally's Deli and Grocery Corp.
Thank you, Robert Buffy for Council's Office. This licensee is located 199 Knickerbocker Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. As mentioned, it's a EB or E-Place beer license. It's self-described and it's documents as a deli, but the ABC law states that such a licensee sells food for consumption on premises and beer is an incidental, and they can only sell beer. The license was issued November 14, 2013, with no prior adverse history, no prior executive order warnings. The sole principal is a Pasquale Serrano. On the evening, or actually late evening of August 21st, 2020, this past Friday, there was a joint executive order task force, investigator Stravali for the Liquor Authority, NYPD Vice, and the local 83rd Precinct, inspect the location for approximately half an hour from 10:36 p.m. to 11:04 p.m. This location, as in the documents submitted, is a relatively small location, a capacity of 25 persons, but the task force observed persons drinking inside the location from mugs of beer, which would refute any indication that these persons maybe brought the beer in or grabbed the beer. They're drinking from mugs, which would indicate that the licensee served those beers to these people. They were just hanging out at a counter, not wearing face coverings. Another person was standing up more near the food counter, apparently with a bottle of Modelo beer with a face covering, but nonetheless standing inside the location, holding a beer. What he was doing there. Again, a female, again, was inside the location, just sitting down at the counter without a face covering. Inside the kitchen area, there were 3 persons with their face coverings just around their mouth and covering their noses, and we certainly know from Department of Health guidelines that the entire nose and mouth must be covered to both protect other people from transmission of the virus. And again, as well as there were persons outside the location seated at a table, this would be apparently some point after 11 p.m., just drinking beer with no food order that the licensee could demonstrate that they each of them had ordered. And additionally, in the refrigerator, investigator Stravali found cans of what's labeled as El Jimador, New Mix, Paloma, and Vampiro. These, I did a quick Google search as well, these appear to be canned tequila cocktails, not, I don't believe, malt beverages that are tequila flavored, but tequila beverages that are not, as far as I can see from the state liquor laws database of brand labels, certainly not brand labeled. Again, my Google search seems to indicate that these items can only be sold at this point in Canada and Mexico, not the United States, and they're 5% alcohol, as well as investigator Chevalier indicated that these cans would not be appropriate for sale in the United States. Certainly, the licensee now is acquiring these beverages for sale. Again, they has an EB license, only sell beer. They cannot sell spirits. So at this point, as the chairman and the commissioners have noted, this executive order 202.3 prohibiting in New York City indoor dining, indoor service alcohol beverages has now been in effect for 5 months. Every licensee should be imputed with knowledge of that. And this licensee seemed to not taking these executive orders to heart, as well as 202.38 allowing outdoor service, but only with food orders. And with the Department of Health and SLA guidelines must be respected, which the licensee hasn't done in this instance and has not appropriately monitored this area with 100 feet from the premises. Again, being a small location, certainly the licensee has no excuse for not inspecting and monitoring the location within 100 feet. So for all these, the council's office submits this matter to the members for an order of summary suspension.
All right, with that, Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Ford, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions, Tom. Thank you.
Chairman Bradley, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
All right, with that, I will call for the vote of the members. First, Commissioner Fan.
This licensee has clearly taken his business way beyond the deli with eating place beer license that was originally presented to the authority. They're now violating many of the governor's executive orders by allowing indoor service, by allowing alcohol service with no food in open containers, and not sufficient use of face masks, and not sufficient social distancing among patrons. There's also information that they've had noise issues, and a band supposedly been playing there. And also we know that they're selling spirit that's outside of their allowed class of beer in form of tequila cocktail that is not even legal in this country. So for many different reasons, due to imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare, I'm voting to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford, your vote.
Yeah, and they were blasting music from inside, which was contributing to the congregating and lingering. No New York Ford reopening plan was on site for inspection as well. So for those reasons, plus all those stated by Commissioner Fan and Council, I vote to summarily suspend.
Chairman Bradley, your vote.
At this point, indoor service remains illegal in the city of New York. It's obvious that this licensee, based on the photos and the evidence, was serving his patrons inside. As a result of that, I think it's obvious they are a threat to the public health, safety, and welfare, so I vote to summarily suspend, along with all the other violations that were documented in the evidence.
All right, thank you. Chairman, I have no other items on the calendar. Is there anything else you want to include?
No, I'm all set. Thank you all, Tom, Gary, your teams, and all the commissioners for putting this all together on a Sunday. I appreciate it.
All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.